Welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning and happy Tuesday, gentlemen.
That it is.
Always is.
Just FYI, this is a pre-recorded episode, maybe a little bit shorter because we're starting a little bit later here than we do to record things for this particular episode. So this will be a slightly shorter episode, but also recorded. So just FYI, audience, you are aware. Or at least for those who join live.
We had a ton of listeners, man, who are doing their runs, doing their walks. I don't know why you would choose BI for that, but hey.
Well, I mean, if you want to run away from something, run away from our podcast, it's good.
Do you think we've made anyone lost weight? I actually have a podcast that
No, we have not. Everyone else has done it on their own. All right, let's jump into our main topic for today. So we don't really have any introductions or news items for this particular episode. Nothing. I mean, some stuff maybe came out, but we weren't really paying too close attention. So we'll get kind of right into the main topic today, and let's just do an introduction on the topic. And I think this is a fair topic because a lot of recent announcements from Microsoft, from the Microsoft blog, we're now seeing the demos that were occurring inside the Microsoft Fabric Conference initial keynote. The keynote came out. There's a whole bunch of demos that were kind of presented with that as well. So we were able to see some live demos or recorded demos of other features that came out from the service. And so, Tommy, you're kind of questioning this. You're kind of saying, look, we have a business who has needs. We have all these brand new features coming out. Some of them are in preview. Some of them are going to be, are getting fully released public availability. How do we cope with that? How do we cope with all these brand new features that are occurring and the balance of, okay, what does the business need and what skills do we have inside the business teams? And how does that align to these brand new features that are coming out? So again, as people who are kind of engaged with the Microsoft ecosystem, how do we pick which features are going to be useful to the business and then really align? Features may be coming out that are not in alignment with what we need for our business to develop, right? So there's also potential here. We're getting new things inside Fabric that are not necessarily part of a business need yet. Maybe not right now, but do we need to know about it?
Yeah, I think you have kind of twofold questions there, right? There's the value of demos and should we revisit how important the art of the possible is, showcasing with our team, with clients. And then the other side of that coin is, what is this Fabric rollout plan really going to look like? How are we going to introduce the world of Fabric to our teams and our organizations? And I think demos will also play a big part of that. But how do we begin to step through all the stones with Fabric as we get, we're farther and farther away from GA now, but as we get to a more place where, hey, we're going to adopt it, what does the training, what does the demos look like? So that's kind of where I see it. And honestly, for me, I'm going to just start with, it's high time to revisit demos again. And I'm not talking about demos that I already have, because we already have the product and the solution, the tooling already available, and that everyone's going to start using it today, which is usually how most of my demos go or have gone. Here's our product or solution. Team, here's your login information. Let's go through how to do it. And I think it's going to be more important than ever with really once Fabric really starts taking kind of integrated and really every team, like, hey, there's more than just Power BI here. We're not just for Fabric, but honestly, working on demos for the art of the possible. I think we've talked about this briefly before, but guys, what do your demos look like? Are they more, here's what we already have and this is what we're going to use, or here's what a potential looks like?
So it sounds like you're kind of breaking this thing into two questions. One is, what is the art of the possible as it relates to demos or things we can do in Fabric? And then your second question, or you want to kind of point out separately, was, what does a Fabric rollout look like? How does that roll out to the business? Is that kind of fair to ask? Okay.
Yep.
So in those two things, let's just talk about the phrase demo to me the art of the possible. I've heard this a number of times actually in consulting. You show up and they're like, "Well, I don't even know what it can do. Show me the art of the possible." And I hear this phrase a lot, and I kind of disagree with the phrase. Honestly, I think I don't really like the art of the possible phrase because I feel like in a lot of cases, Microsoft designs features and products and tools with a specific solving a specific problem in mind. So my opinion here is when you say, show me the art of possible, yes, I can show you this very fancy, elaborate report, but you lose a lot of context of how long did it take to create it? Was there a graphic designer on the project that made it look very snappy and sharp? Like, yes, this is what you could design, but there's very little context given to, what kind of people are involved? How long did it take? And do we need this on every single report? I think there's the way I'd like to portray this is business. So let me just say this. If someone asks for it, yes, I'll demo some fancy stuff. No problem. On the flip side of this, I actually would rather say, tell me what is challenging today in your business processes. We can't get this data. We can't get these reports out in time. This thing doesn't get scheduled. Like, give me the business challenges, and then me as the expert in the Power BI Fabric realm will come in and say, okay, here's how we would potentially solve this problem. Here's 2 or 3 solutions that we can give you that would solve those problems. So I think it's more valuable to the business. Yes, you need to understand the capabilities of what all the tool can do because you don't know where to plug it in to your business. On the other hand, just let's talk about challenges you're having first. Just tell me what's painful. What is causing a lot of time? Where are people spending a lot of their effort and time against things? Because those are the kind of issues we should be tackling and figuring out, okay, in lieu of these larger challenges, how do I go back and say, how does Fabric solve those things? Because Fabric's not going to solve every problem the same way. And you could potentially solve that same problem 2 or 3 different ways. So talking about, and this is where I think, let me give you an example so I won't start talking so fuzzy here. You have data coming from an API, you're landing it in JSON files, you're taking those JSON files and you're transforming them into tables, then building a report on top of them. I can think of about 2 or 3 different patterns you could use to go do all of that directly inside Fabric. Hit a pipeline. Pipeline makes the call. Pipeline unwinds call into a table, write table down to Lakehouse. You could do the same thing inside data flows. Data flows can go reach into the data, unparse the JSON, flatten it out, makes a table, write it down to Lakehouse. Or you can go to notebooks, do the same thing. Make a call with a notebook, get the JSON, return it as a data frame, write it back down. So there's 3 patterns. And so the art of the possible is, well, these are the 3 things you could do, but what's your team skill set? Are you familiar with pipelines? Do we have to learn, do we have to teach your knowledge that? So to me, like, I think the art of the possible conversation is kind of moot.
What kind of demo are we talking about? Because
that's a great question.
To me, there's
what does it mean to you?
2 significantly different types, right? And I'm confused as to which one we're aligning to, or maybe it's both. But I kind of tend to agree with you, Mike, around the art of the possible thing, where one demo type, the one that is designed to wow people.
Okay.
Right?
I like
show them some of the big features or big things that you would find impactful to the organization potentially, or how your product differentiates itself from other products, or just how far light years ahead you can do this thing in your tool of choice, right?
Yep.
But to your point, like, those are great from a capturing attention standpoint.
Yes.
But I agree from the like, I don't like them for 2 reasons. They serve a purpose, and that purpose is lock people's attention in that direction, but it keeps it at a very high level. And ultimately, or I should say, typically, the more you're in these spaces, you understand there's nuance underneath. It's not going to work exactly the way it was pitched, right? So what are the 2 things that are happening here? One, you're instantly losing context to how long things actually take to develop that thing, typically, right? Like, you don't just fall into these amazing reports that Miguel Myers builds and that you'll find on
Agreed.
their website. And
So
all
that's one
these
of the
kind of
reasons.
stuff. You don't just
That's where I
"Bleh,
went.
there
Yeah.
it is. Bleh, here it is. Like you can go to your computer in 5 minutes to wow, take all your raw crappy data, and it's going to look like this. It's not how it works.
I will admit the theme generator does a pretty good job of that, though.
I mean, if you're gonna pick a tool, that probably gets you about as close to that as possible. That may be the one. And then on the other side of that is there was the losing context. Anyway, I'll talk about the other demo type. There's one other thing I didn't like about the big product feature wow kind of thing.
Yep.
But the other demo type is a how-to demo. And I think to me, those are significantly different because how-tos are hugely impactful, I think, because it gets people, it does a couple things in my mind. It gets people over the fear of failure kind of thing. Like, I have no idea where to even start. Like with all the fabric features, for example, right?
Yeah.
All these new things are coming out. I can read about it, but I would have to go play myself, right? And rather than do that, walking through a demo or having a video snippet of somebody doing a 5-minute walkthrough,
Yep.
It's the show me how this thing works, and then I can visually see what are the steps that I need to take to do these new things. Oh my gosh, that's not that hard at all, right? And that's ultimately what I think is really powerful behind demos. Is it's just a walkthrough. It's like, hey, come along for the ride. I'll show you how to do this thing.
I like your point there, Seth, because if I'm reading across LinkedIn or Twitter about people are putting out blog articles, so people will continually put out here's the thing that I did. I bookmark a lot of things. I think more around the step-by-step demos of things that I want to either lock away in my mind. And we do a so Tommy and I and Seth, we all contribute to this thing called jam.community or jam.powerbi.tips, right? So we have a website where we find links of things that we find are relevant. We bookmark them basically and then share them with you. So if I find things that I can bookmark, and LinkedIn's a little bit weird because it has to make you like log in to see the content, but most other websites just kind of let you see the post without having to be logged in. I bookmark a lot of these how-tos. Hey, look, I'm making an SVG that has a shading to it that automatically shades based on the highest bar in this table. And so here's the original bar chart. Here's the new bar chart with SVGs behind the scenes. And so I really like those kind of examples because then I can see the thought process of what people can produce with certain visuals. And then I can then have this knowledge library of, okay, here's a bunch of things I know that are possible. And I have collections of links that help me when someone asks, hey, could we do this? Yes, you can. It's not out of the box. Here's what you need to go do. It's something similar to this.
And I guess that's where I slightly concede the point of the art of the possible, right? Like you're
True.
stretching the bounds of the wider general audience that is not nearly as broken as we are related to like wanting to, be understand everything Power BI and the things coming out or Fabric. So the art of the possible kind of ranges into like, hey, we're going to show you some things you may not have been aware of or how to leverage these new features. So in that context, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, we live on that kind of demo or user groups. Like
Live
in
on
our
what
own
kind of
fun.
demo?
But different though. I would say a user group is a different context than other things though, right? User groups are there to educate to some degree, right?
Well, so is what you just said too.
But I want to align more with like business objectives. I think where I get a little bit more hung up is aligning directly between what we're trying to produce as a demo and then going after, the business. Do I really need a table that has a whole bunch of SVGs as items in it? Probably not, right? My business objective kind of more along the lines is I'm trying to just get data out of this table, or I'm trying to get these couple of visuals, or I'm trying to answer these kind of questions about my data. I think many of those pieces are, I want to align to those things. Like,
Sure.
let me give you another example. There is data activator, which is interesting. I'm not sure there's a ton of use cases that I'm working in companies with that need data activator. Do I really want data to be moving constantly and constantly adding information into a report or dashboard? I would argue most of the time, organizations their data culture is not ready for real time data to come into a report. And the reason I say that is because I've had occurrences where if we refresh the data multiple times per day, someone will look at a report in the morning and see that the numbers are different by the afternoon. And without clear report design, there's not a little note there on the report that says, hey, data was refreshed as of this time. So I feel like sometimes people are in the context of a day are expecting the data to be somewhat consistent, and the data culture of the company isn't caught up to some of the tooling features where we could actually do real-time data on things.
Yeah, but I think a lot of time, regardless with the how-to demo, there's already something for you to play in or set up that's already working, right? That's always going to be the assumption with the how-to. And we already can log in. We're just kind of now letting other people down the path. And again, that's what we live on, though.
But those are things you're trying to explain to people. Here's what you can do with these tools and where they may apply. In all those demos, you've already in your mind, you've already framed, here's the problem. You describe, like every time you do a blog post, hey, I'm trying to get data from SharePoint. Like that's one of our main blog posts from our website, right?
Yeah.
That is a huge topic. So the problem is I have files, I'm sticking them in SharePoint. How do I get access to them? That's the problem I'm solving. Then everything else in the demos supports the answer to get to that problem. So to me, when I look at this demo things, it's a lot of it is start with the problem, work your way backwards, and then here's the demo. When we're talking user groups or things that are kind of like net new content, I mean, Microsoft is designing the whole. Let's talk task flows, right? We've seen the demo of task flows from Microsoft at FabCon. That whole thing exists because there was a problem. The problem is and Tommy, you and I had this problem. We have too many artifacts inside a workspace, and I don't know what artifact is doing what. I've got multiple lake houses. I've got multiple computes, a pipeline, a data flow, a notebook that are lifting the data out, doing something transformationally with it, and then putting it back down. In our minds, there is no pattern to how all these different, literally looking at a list of items, we can't sort them out and see the logical flow diagram of what's being built. So task flows is intended to be this diagram that helps us mentally group similar items into buckets and utilize them to build out this sequence of pipeline of data. Makes total sense. But in my mind, the reason that demo exists is because here's the problem. A workspace just got too congested with too many things. Here's a better way to organize it. That's the answer to that problem. And that's where I'm going. Is like there's a business problem that's being solved.
But I think that's where I slightly disagree. Just of course, all these technical solutions are demoing or showing like a problem, right?
Great.
The problem that you may encounter that requires me to demo something to you because it's a little convoluted or more complex is this is how you connect to folders in SharePoint, right? Like because everybody's going to do it.
Sure.
That's not a business problem. It's a problem. Like it is part of the features that we're like we deal with in a technical or business space. And to me, that's significantly different than a business problem because that is typically more nuanced with a business need in mind. And I guess like I'm delineating between like the tooling that we use, which is why demos can be extremely useful. And I guess in the user group scenario, what people are coming to do is learn about new, like the features, the how-tos, the whatever, so that what they're doing is taking the context of their business and the problems that they have and learning how to solve them. And is that part of the same thing? Could it be exactly the same thing? Yes, but to me, there's like nuance there.
I mean, I see your point, and I think maybe my analogy of SharePoint and getting files from SharePoint is a bit too simple around a business need, right? Maybe the larger business need is, clients sending me files. I have flat files coming in. What do I do with them? I got to get them into my report and then produce data back to the client, right? So maybe the business need is a bit larger than, hey, I'm just trying to pick up files from SharePoint. So I would agree with you there. But all I'm trying to convey, and my point is, I think there needs to be a tighter alignment between what are we trying to produce and what thing are we trying to solve. And I think what we're fishing for is, hey, business, did you know you had these problems, or have you found these areas of what you're doing in your day-to-day work? These things are likely challenging you. Hey, by the way, Fabric has introduced these new features that can meet these challenges you may be already facing. Like inside, like maybe another example might be, hey, you are having data, it's getting larger. Microsoft introduces incremental refresh and data flows. Hey, by the way, you can use this. So here's your data flows are failing because they're taking too long. There's too much data coming in. By the way, did we know here's a new feature that we demo to show you that, hey, you have the problem, it already exists. Here's something that the tool can do to then align with the solution.
So there's a really important part here. I think we're talking about demos, and I think to make a really clear distinction, there is the simple training how to go to your settings type of demo. Again, to your point, there's a problem I'm trying to solve or do, and I could either read an article or I could do the demo, or I can follow this demo. And I'm going to briefly put that to the side because I think the other type of demo is, I guess, more of the feature demo. Of course, it will show you kind of the UI, the navigation. Its goal, though, and I think that's where the big focus is, its intent is not that by the end of that 5 minutes or 10 minutes that the user is going to be able to log in and do exactly that. It's the demo that's showing the features involved, and I don't want to say the wow or the art of the possible, but still there's the either tool, product, or technology that we're going to showcase all the features, all the different things that would be available to you or is going to be available to you.
So let me make this a bit more tangible for me, because maybe I'm just missing it still. Give me an example of what one of those demos would look like. What is a demo you would do that says that meets that need?
I think when scorecards first came out, and I don't even think scorecards, I set up a demo. Again, there's going to be no one's data. We weren't ready for it or didn't have all the metrics, but I set up a full demo to show, hey, just keep this in mind. We're actually going to be promoting this. All your metrics, the problem that you have is not, again, where your settings are. Hey, look at this thing called scorecards. Here's what I can do in it. So it's not what one thing I'm trying to do. It's the things that I would be able to do. And that demo worked a lot. We were beginning to do different teams just so they understood what the feature was. So you can keep everything here. Look, we can collaborate together and you can go to all your reports. So yeah, is it solving one, changing the color folders? No, but that's why it's a feature-based demo. And those can really work, especially for one thing for me trying to talk to someone about the technology. Oh, you have this metric thing and you go to it and then you connect all your things, or I can show you. And that can be a lot more powerful.
But again, what I would kind of argue in that demo, that feature, and this is maybe where my mind is just different at this point. I'm looking at that going, okay, I understand the demo of scorecards, but isn't scorecards there? The design or the reason the scorecards showed up existed was because as a company, I can have a collection of reports all across my organization or even just a workspace. And I have a very difficult time of communicating KPIs and measuring KPIs against a goal. There's an objective to be measured against what a number is saying from a report somewhere. So so in my opinion, if I'm building a report where goals or objectives or key alignments to the organization that needs to be taken place, Power BI has no data input mechanism. This is one of the only areas where you're easily able to inject your own data, either via data points or by typing in the numbers that you need. So to me, scorecards were here's what I'm supposed to be doing, or here's where I'm at right now with actual data. Here's a budget, a metric, a
I think,
calculation that aligns to that. So to me, that whole feature exists because there was a missing aspect of Power BI that needed to be addressed.
right. But this is something that you have to now convince a ton of people. Again, like
Not
this is
disagreeing
not
with you,
okay.
but there was a business problem. I can't take budgets or goals and align them to my existing data. That was the problem. So
Sure.
again, it was like a broader. I go back to my argument earlier. Like, cool feature, neat demo, but that still fits into the alignment of there was a broader business issue being addressed by the feature. And so I think if we focus on the business issues and come back with here's a business issue and here's how this feature solves it, I think that makes more resonation. It resonates better with people consuming the feature.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And I think there's certain elements of just what is the new feature. Are we talking about, I can now connect to, a new source and that's a 2-minute demo? Or am I talking about scorecards or now task flows or something that's a whole new feature set that requires a lot more engagement or walkthrough or is something that could drastically change in a better way how I operate as a business or
Correct.
or how I deal with that certain thing. And I think those are the more not the more interesting, but maybe where the delineation between even the types of demos that I was talking about, right? But I get. Go ahead.
I'm going to push you on this one, Seth. Would you agree, though, those demos are more successful or resonates with people more when you phrase out or start with the phrasing of here's a problem we see in the business and then demo, like at least stating.
I think any demo or presentation that you do that aligns more to solving a business area need is more valuable.
Okay.
When you can do that, right? Like if you think about this,
Correct.
a lot of this ecosystem now all mashed together in Fabric is a lot of different buckets of features that people can plug into to solve their problem, right? So if I'm going to go ad nauseum, I don't want to poke this, but I'm going to, because this water balloon may just keep going because Mike won't be able to not talk about it.
I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go.
Implementation patterns, right? How do I build a data pipeline? Do I use the lakehouse? Do I use a data warehouse? Do I use data flows? Do I use whatever?
Sure.
All of these are options. And I think when you put them in the context of certain architectures, which are not just pre-built into the tool, right? Mm-hmm. Those are designs that you use the tool to apply to, right? And I think when when a new feature comes out or there's a new capability, to align it to one of those strategies, I think is really powerful. Is that specific to like a business objective? I suppose you could kind of align that, but it's like, this is how we've chosen to solve our business problem, right? It's a technical route or architecture that we're enhancing for somebody. And I think it resonates more if you're like, hey, if you guys are using blah, 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 this feature is really impactful for you because this and this and this. And, and of course, I think that's going to resonate further than, hey, new feature, this one does these two things, right? Because then people have to solve it for themselves. And I think in large part, if I get where you're going, like moving kind of away from just the demo aspect of this and how do we align all these features to the business, this is the big challenge I think that we have and we're discussing a lot on the podcast, which is what do you do with this flood of all these new features and how do they align to these different solution areas so that they can be articulated in this way. And I think that is something that like people are starting to do, across the ecosystem. You see a lot of presentations or demos of how to do, certain aspects of things, but it's just going to be this continual process as all of these features are churned out at the pace that they are.
And I agree with that one.
And honestly, I think it's going to be even more prevalent too with I mean, we're getting used to the UI too with Fabric too. Like, let's not. I know, like, we obviously are working with it, but
Oh, I would agree. It
yeah,
was clunky in the beginning. I didn't know how to get to the right menu. I couldn't find how to make a data flows Gen 2. Things weren't missing. Like I didn't know how to click on the right
right.
things to
So,
get there.
like,
Yeah.
I think this is very much demos too. That we're really, for the most part, we're not going to have a full, in most cases, a full working solution that we've done for years. Like, we have a really great data model. I know exactly what you need. This is going to be something like with the task flows, right? How many task flows exist today? Answer: none. How many are like and be integral to what we do? Probably it's going to be like one of those things that we're either sharing or providing as a deliverable, right? So that's that kind of impact that we don't have a demo for because it doesn't exist yet. So for me, I think also when I'm dealing with non-technical people, and I think this is my big push here. For me, when I'm thinking of a demo that I really want to push more in setting up, is how can I conceptualize for you, the user or the business? Forget all the fancy words and the resources. We'll talk about that, but let me show you how much more easier your life is, or what impact. Come on,
Okay. No, I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going.
no, I'll wait there because I think I hit a nerve.
Well, I mean, I guess my answer is do that. That's fine. But do it with a context of, hey, here is a potential challenge you're going to face, or here is a challenge that you're going to use when you get into Fabric,
Yeah.
and here's the problem statement. Here's demo feature. Like for example, you say task flows, which I think is really interesting. Another feature that I haven't gotten my hands on or I need to play around with a bit more before I have an opinion on things is the metrics hub, the new metrics hub that was announced by Zoe in the Fabric conference. I think that has a lot of potential. I think it's really interesting from a, hey, we have curated certified data sets. We have KPIs and measures and sums inside that data set with the appropriate dimensions that we need to build something that the users may want, right? So bundling together a KPI or a metric with a handful of dimensions that we're allowing people to play with and certifying them and putting them in a certified space for people to go digest, I think is incredibly useful.
Yeah.
And so again, I think as long as you're saying, look, you frame part of the problem statement and then do the demo, I think it makes a lot more sense and it'll be a lot easier for people to understand, like, just and again, maybe this is just my heartburn around what I've had people asking me around is, what is the art of the possible? Give me everything that it can do, and then I'll listen to that and try and figure out where it fits my organization. I feel that's a lower hanging value or lower hanging fruit on the, it's not as impactful as here's a series of challenges you may be facing. You're going to have a workspace with lots of stuff in it. Task flows help you fix that problem. Here's how it fixes it. Boom. You demo, right? Here's where Metrics Hub fits in, right? You're going to have a whole bunch of things. You're going to work at a central team. They're going to build good data. They're going to build good measures. You're going to need to share that metric across the organization. Boom. Here's how you do it. Demo. Boom. So to me, it's just a lot of that alignment of taking what we know as experts in the space where we've struggled, right? And saying, here's the struggle that we've dealt with. And here's an example of where that kind of lives. I think that to me adds more value to the business so they can frame their mind around it. Now, to your other point, Tommy, just doing demos, like, I think there's also a level of a lower hanging fruit here, or that is around, well, I don't know what I need to know, right? I'm not comfortable clicking around inside Fabric. I'm not comfortable making lake houses and making things run. Well, that's an entirely different demo that we're talking about. That's more of that, I think what you said earlier, Seth, it's more of the how-to. Like, I got to click the button so I become comfortable with it. What?
I'm still stuck on top. No, go ahead. What, Tommy?
No,
do you not agree with that?
Seth, you have the beef, quite a big beef, apparently, when I said, just let me show you how cool it is. So let's dive into that.
No, your phrase was, how can I get people to conceptualize the particular thing that you're pitching in the demo, and where I scoffed, which you seem highly attuned to, is how, like, let me show you how I make it easier for you. And that, like, I guess could potentially lead into the same point that Mike made earlier, which is like, I think as business intelligence professionals or people that understand the IT side and the business side, that is a very slippery slope, and you don't want to pitch that to business people without them understanding the level of effort that some of these features or what you're demoing entails. Now, is there a time and a place for that? Yes, right? Like if you're selling somebody on, hey, these are all the things that we can do. Look at how amazing this is. And the things that are going to be easier are the decisions, the insights you get afterwards, like the automation, the data cleansing, like the data quality, all of these things that this package of demoed pitch provide to the business, that is going to be easier for you. But I'm going to talk to a smaller group afterwards as far as like level of effort to get you guys there. And that is still a very, I think, valid point. It's where we just leave that off in that feature demo as an expectation that all of this is easy, that I think is disingenuous. And a lot of people do it. Right? Like it's how it's one of the things I loathe about sales pitches. Because you don't give me all the details I need to know to make an informed decision. What you're doing is you're trying to hit all of my yep buttons without any of the negative side, and that just it irritates me because I can't make an informed decision. I don't know if it's going to fit in my platform. I don't know if these features are directly aligned because you're only giving me the good stuff. You're not giving me the bad. And I'm not like, maybe it's just me because I know everybody does this. Because if you read blogs, where do you have to go? Technical documentation all the way at the bottom. What are the caveats? What are the limitations? Because there's always limitations, right? And that's do I have the perfect answer? Do you want to bring limitations into the, an arena where you want people to focus on the insights, the better, the things to push forward? No, you kind of don't, because then people latch onto that, as opposed to, but the nuance there is the next conversation with the person who's deciding how to go through things. If one of those limitations is something that is not going to be fixed or is 6 months out, that changes how fast a company is going to implement something. Because if it's a linchpin, right? Like say you don't support a data source, you're going to support it, but you don't right now. Well, that changes when I want to implement this new thing for the business, because you sold me on the impact. What you didn't sell me on is the implementation. How do I get there? Right. And if I don't have that clarity, I think that's my sticking point in a lot of the look at the latest, coolest, newest, whatever, because I think most people are always looking for like people in these arenas. If you're going to conferences, if you're going to user groups, if you're engaged and listening and learning about the new features and updates, you're looking for ways you can implement this into your business. And that's the thing, is like, I don't even know what I'm saying. Like, does it belong in the demo? Probably not, but it should be somewhere in there. But if we're doing demos about like, and maybe that's a nuance. If you're pitching features and updates and insights, and you're trying to make the sale, I guess not. But I sure hope it belongs in the second conversation where it's like the implementation. But I can't go from one to the next. I can't go, if you're going to sell me something and I go, yep, Tommy, I'm going to do business with you. And then the next conversation I have with you is, oh yeah, I didn't tell you that this and this and this doesn't apply to your business. Well, now I just made a decision to go with you, and you didn't give me all the details I needed. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm in a spot.
And for the record, there's nothing I disagree with that. I think if you're going in anywhere with disingenuous, kind of thing. But I think I don't know if I'm going to play devil's advocate this late or just ask a question this late in the game. You obviously have to preface any solution that you're going to do, whether it's actually viable or not. And I think like I said, this is both in-house too. With we really want to push fabric on our organization. This is what we really want to use. You may not have the resources right now in order to do so,
So that's
or
where I'd like to take the conversation now, is talking about a skill. Keep going, Tommy. I like where you're going with
yeah,
this one.
yeah. So what's going to happen, and I can see this because it would have been myself, that I really want all the fabric things, and my organization is either slow to roll it out, or there's a very tight squeeze on the cash, or
Mhm.
there's some IT things. It's not going to be like opening up a playground, and it's like, oh, we can do the slide today, kind of thing, the data synapse slide.
Yeah.
So
This is a great
yeah,
this is a great point, I think.
because I think this goes back to the conceptualized things. Well, when you talk to people who are not in our space, what do they think fabric is? Right? Like, what is fabric to them? And it's not going to be the same answer we have. So, how do we say, hey, business, you can change the game in house? We can build our data culture. We can speed up time, but we got to invest in this thing called fabric. Let me show you, kind of thing. And that, I don't know if that's where you're taking that, but
Well, I like where you're going with this one, because I have seen this occur multiple times now, because Fabric has a different licensing model than what we're traditionally used to with Pro and Premium per user. And Premium per user doesn't get the Fabric things, right? To be very clear, that experience is still kind of resigned just for the Power BI ecosystem of things. So I think this is going to be a very useful talking point to organizations for figuring out, does this fabric thing add enough? And I'll use a balance here. Does fabric add enough value to require the cost, or the change in what I do in my internal processes to make that spend difference, right? So to me, there's a balancing bar that, or I think of a scale in my mind. My mental model is there's a scale. If I can put fabric on one side of the scale and it weighs heavy enough that it's adding enough value that I'm ready to move resources and training and make a mental, move in my organization to go use it, then the money's worth the spend. And so for a lot of the basic things of features of Fabric, it goes down really small. We can get an F2. So to do a proof of concept, we have an area that is a struggle for us. We're trying to get data from someplace. We're trying to collect it, put it into tables. I think Fabric is a great opportunity to do a, proof of concept, proof of value, whatever you want to kind of call it, the term that you want to use in your organization. It's a great opportunity to bring that forward and say, let's do a small thing. Let's see if we can get it to work. And to your point earlier, Tommy,
yeah,
this is where I think it does make a lot of sense to have that conversation. Is, did adding investment in Fabric, did it make our life easier? Did it give us data faster? Did it provide us more capability we didn't have before? And if the answer is yes to some of those questions, I think you then really seriously evaluate, okay, where do we strategically place this one? Until you start seeing the immense amount of value that this tool brings to you, and then you start rolling out across the organization. So I do think there's some implementation planning pieces that need to occur here. And I think that's where you go find guidance from people, or you find, you have to understand the tool enough to know where you can plug it in so it finds value. And I think this is going to be a struggling point for companies, because they're not going to know always the best place to plug in the tool.
Yeah, I agree with those efforts. I think some of my comments fall into a different realm, because that leads to me like saying my comments were more, can I implement this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I have a hard blocker? Do I have, like, what are the critical elements of this new feature you're pitching me?
Yeah.
Or this new thing that I want to implement that sounds fantastic, but all of a sudden doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
versus
there's some kind of weird cost tenant thing I can't do, or something like that.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's a cost thing. Like, because to me, that is, I can implement it. What are the choices I have? Like, what is the value it provides to me as a business?
Sure.
And as technologists, we're like, yes, we wish everybody would have these tools, because then we could, go help every organization. But there are licensing costs, right?
Sure.
But that falls into line with, I think, what you're saying is, you have to evaluate, or businesses have to evaluate, what is the value that it's providing, and you can implement or start to implement new technologies like the whole of Fabric to potentially architect new solutions on. And when you're going through those exercises of R&D or trying to build something new on a new platform, that's where can I implement this falls in, right? Squarely, that you need people to be able to guide or show or at least be aware of when you're implementing that new solution. Because at the same time, I've seen many R&D projects get passed off to devs that have no experience in the area, and the whole thing dies because they don't know how to implement it. Could they have? Yes. Yeah. They just didn't know how. So it dies, right? And the flip side of that is, say those new solutions or architected solutions, work really, really well. You can prove out the value. Then you can say, hey, this cost, this is what we're finding, blah, blah, blah. Do we analyze and look at replatforming our existing solutions? Because the level of effort there,
that's a good point,
resource cost or whatever, gets us to this point on the other side.
Agree.
So all of a sudden, there's a good business case for doing that.
I think that's a really good point, Seth, because I find many more companies that are coming from on-prem to cloud are much more willing to adopt and accept Fabric.
Sure.
Because it's like, it's the package deal. It has all the things I need. But where I see more hesitation is in companies that have already a solid footprint in something cloud. And they're looking at saying, okay, any new projects?
Right.
And I think it's much harder for an organization to split efforts between two tools, right? We've already built all this stuff in Databricks, Snowflake, whatever. The story has to be compelling enough to get me to move out of that solution and into a new solution. And there's a huge amount of pain for having to run two systems at once. I can't stand running two systems at once. It's so difficult.
Well, in many aspects, I think the choice, however it was made, to land on Delta Parquet as a back end and OneLake, like it was, because a lot of the systems that in the big data ecosystem all work within that very, very well.
Yes.
And it should be very easy, or I should say easier, to leverage existing data sources for new solutions and vetting out Fabric.
The story, so I love that note, and I'll 100% agree. It removes a lot of friction from companies wanting to adopt Fabric by saying, hey, just keep your data where it exists. Instead, just create me a shortcut to where it lives. And I think there's a story here, and I haven't quite fully fleshed it out yet, but I think there's a very similar story that I'm starting to fabricate around. Fabricate that. Pun intended. I think there's another mindset that I'm looking at here is, let's imagine there's central BI who's making a bunch of tables. What happens when that business unit requests access to those tables? How do we distribute that content to them? With shortcuts, this becomes incredibly easy. Here's your own lake, Mr. Business Unit. And here's a whole bunch of shortcuts to data that already exists in the central place.
Sounds like a demo starting already.
Nope. You use Power Query and paginated reports. That's what you use. That's it.
Well, I know that will work in some situations, but that may not work in all situations. But my point here is, I could imagine a world where there's like multiple teams all shortcutting their way back into the central lake. One thing I haven't tested out is when I'm using those shortcuts, if I'm accessing that data, which compute am I using from which workspace is acquiring that data? Because if I think about central BI, I want central BI focusing on making good tables and having that data regularly show up. That's going to need a different capacity units than it will be for a business to do a bunch of self-service stuff and charge them differently. So there's a whole bunch of licensing implications and potentially cost optimizations that occur here by building out these, hub and spoke based on shortcuts and what capacity is being used when you leverage these shortcuts in different workspaces. Is it the capacity unit of that workspace where the shortcut lives? Is that the compute I'm using, or am I using the compute of the sourced central BI team? I think there's a lot of implications here, but again, I really like your example there, Seth, because there's going to be multiple business use cases around the organization, and now we have more tools to more flexibly give that, and that the Delta Parquet format is essential to having all this stuff talk together. Super good move. Let's do final thoughts here on this one. Sorry, you want to say something else?
No, my final thought is like what's fun about this, I think, is, we're right now in the giant cauldron, right, where we have all the ingredients just getting poured in, and ultimately it's the architectures and methods that we're building, like the collective community and people engaging early with the tool, are those, like, these are the solutions that are going to be the demos of the future. It's a fun thought.
Hey.
I feel like Seth's double toil and trouble spinning a cauldron of features for you, and that's cool. I like it. Tommy, what are your final thoughts on this kind of topic?
No, I think that I love doing demos. I love being able to talk to people, show them what's cool, and just like going step by step. Maybe, and I think just like, what we said is, I think there's going to be a little more seat of our pants with some of the demos coming out, because like I said, we're still discovering everything about it, but that doesn't make it bad. And it doesn't make it that we can't show anything because we're not there necessarily all the way there yet. We have to, in a sense, how do you best preach Fabric? I think it's going to be through demos.
I would agree with that. I don't think there's anything. I think I agree with that 100%. I guess my only request as I look at this topic and coming back to this one would be is just make sure we state the use case. Here's the use case. Here's why you would want to spend the time or effort to learn this feature set or whatever. And I think as long as we focus our use cases on solving real problems, 100% cool with it. Lots of demos makes total sense, and do it. It's enjoyable. It helps you. I think demos do two things. Demos help, one, the user of the demo or the creator of the demos continue solidifying their knowledge around what the demo is, how does it work, the tool itself. So even doing demos for yourself or working through small little exercises, I think is incredibly valuable. On the other hand, I wouldn't just throw a kitchen sink at something and just be like, all right, here's a whole bunch of new features without actually having like a real world problem we're trying to solve, or at least trying to understand as you're going through the build of the feature, what challenges could this solve? And to me, it's a lot of like this, what challenges should I be solving? Or if I'm looking at this new feature, how does this make my life easier based on the new feature that's showing up? So with that, I can't wait till incremental refresh flows shows up on Data Flows Gen 2. That's one that I really, really want here recently. So don't know when that's coming out, but that would be one that I would really, really much appreciate. I'll throw that little side note in there as well. Well, thank you all very much for listening to the podcast. I hope this conversation was engaging for you. I hope you are spending time either making demos or consuming demos from other people, because I really do think that actually does add value to you learning the tool and figuring out how it works and potentially where you could apply it in your organization. So apparently Tommy's going to be doing a whole bunch of new YouTube videos around demoing features of these new things. So I'm going to push him on this, and we're going to make Tommy put his money where his mouth is and get more demos out for you so you can see how these new features are going to work.
Dude,
that being said, yeah, exactly. I like the setup. All right. So we're going to hold you to it, Tommy. That being said, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your ears. I know this has been a commitment of time. Hopefully your run went well. You enjoyed that. With that, please share it with somebody else. We really appreciate the feedback. We really appreciate you sharing the podcast, and let us know what you liked about this conversation. Was there something that we said that you disagreed with? We'd love to hear about that too. So let us know on social media. Share what your thoughts are about the podcast. We really appreciate that. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Man, you can find the podcast you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central. And join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Excellent. See you next time.